What is up, ninjas? My name is Semworld, and welcome to the complete guide to master Serum. This is going to be episode 2, and today we're learning and unlocking the filter section inside of Serum. So what I mean by unlocking, guys, is as you guys know in this series, I like to pretty much talk about each section, and as we talk about and learn a new section of Serum, we're allowed to use it for sound design at the end of the video. This really, I believe, helps a lot of people understand what the capabilities are of each section, how it comes together in the sound design world, and why it's so important to know certain sections, okay? So today, we are going to be tackling the filter section. Now, the Serum filter section, guys, can be found on the right side of Serum, as you can see. Now, Serum is, excuse my language, is going to have a shit ton of filters. Like, literally, out of every synth I've owned, analog, digital, Serum has the most filters out of them all. A lot of them, honestly, I'm not using. A lot of them are variations of each where it gives a different vibe. Like in the MISC, we have low passes, French low pass, German low pass. And we're going to be talking about what the differences are between them. We're going to be talking about the most popular ones that you're going to find yourself using most of the time, as well as the newer ones like the Reverb filter, like the comb filter, which is being used heavily in dubstep, trap, and these like very hard genres, and what we can do with them. Okay, guys, now filters. We're going to be talking about the main ones right now. We have the low pass. That is going to be the cream of the crop filter. This is probably the one you're going to use the most. And like the name implies, a low pass, as you start to close the low pass, it will allow the low frequencies to pass through. The bouncer's like, yo, those highs, they're whack. Let me get that low and baby girl. You get the idea there. So the lows are going to be maintained in that sound. This is super useful. For instance, let's say that you want to make a bass and you like the sound of a square. And you know, the square is one of the heaviest wavetables you can have. But like that, it sounds kind of like, you know, I'm making deep house, I'm not making trap sound. Like, well, that's where low pass comes into play. You get rid of the highs, and now we got a very strong, massive bass, okay? Now, as you can see, as I move to the left here, and you see your low passes, you see this number next to a lot of these filters, like MG Low 6, 12, 18, 24. It ain't a gang. You know, what that means is that the higher the slope, pretty much that's what it stands for, slope. But what that should be for you is here we have the slope. So the higher the number, the more strict it is. What that means for you when you're doing sound design is that if you want to make a sound where you want to completely kill the highs, well, an MG Low 24 will be your best friend. If you want a little bit of leniency, you know, not that mother that's not so strict, she's like, oh yeah, you can go to the party, but you can only have one drink. That's MG Low 12. MG Low 6, you can get fucked up. I don't care. You know, I think you get the idea there. So MG Low 6 is a little bit more lenient, lets a lot more of the highs out, while MG Low 24 is very strict. You can't go out. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys, okay? What we're going to do here, guys, is discuss every knob here that we have with the low pass filter. First off, we have the cutoff knob. So right to left, we get rid of the highs. Next to that, we have the resonance, which is a boost right where that cutoff is. Now, with each MG Low 24 slope, what changes, as well as it being strict, it also changes the way the resonance reacts. So if you guys are huge fans of that very acid sound, you know, this is how you're going to do it with a very high resonance. Now, the TB303, I believe, had an MG Low 24 filter in it, and a lot of people would have a high resonance to get those acid style sounds. So this is very useful. A lot of people don't like the resonance though, because in modern house music and stuff, we don't really use it unless we're doing wubs, unless we're trying to create that kind of vibe. But the resonance, all it does is it boosts that section where the crossfade, where that slope starts to begin. Very useful for creating pads with like a very alien vibe, as you're going to see. To the right of that, we have the stereo spread or panning. The crazy thing about it is you can actually hear it kind of move, and it does create an effect that's like a happy Easter egg because you think it's left and right. But that's going to be the stereo spread, and it changes with each filter, so just mess around with that. Majority of the time, I don't find myself using it for common sound design, for common sounds people want to make for their music. To the bottom left of that, we have the drive knob, which is going to pretty much, you know, increase. Best way for me to say it is it's going to boost everything that is allowed through. So here, if we have a low pass, it's boosting all the lows. Pretty much everything underneath this blue line there, you can see that. To the right of that, we have the fat filter. And honestly, this one to me is a little bit weird because usually what it will do is it will boost more. So if you have your drive here, it will boost a little bit more. Majority of the time, though, you will find variations. As you can see, fill variation pops up there. So if you're using like a morph, this will be your morph, and we'll talk about those. If you're using a a comb or a reverb filter will be a damp, and we will talk about those as well. All right, to the right here we have the mix, just pretty standard. How much of the low pass you want it to react. So let's say that you want to do a low pass that doesn't cut a lot of highs. You can also do this. You can also modulate this once we get to filters and LFO to do some cool stuff with it. Again, creativity is there. So if you can do it, why not try it? Now, finally, to the left of that, guys, we're going to have our routing. So here we have this highlighted. That means oscillator A is being routed into the filter. B highlighted, oscillator B. Okay, very useful for when you're layering sounds together. You want to get the high frequencies of one sound and layer it on top of this sound. It's good for that. Next below that, we have the N, which is the noise. So we'll talk about the noise later on through this series, but we can also route the noise section through our filter. And then the sub, which is at the bottom, the top left, as we've talked about last episode. Pretty standard. You can route it in through there as well. Now, at the bottom of that, we have something neat called a key track that I feel a lot of people don't show enough love to, and a lot of people don't know what the hell it does. Now, the purpose of a key track, guys, is that when you're playing low frequency, the filter stays closed, and the higher you go. So with that being said, guys, those are the standard controls here for the low pass. As we go to the other filters, they're going to be the same. Okay, now the next filter we have is the high pass, and this is going to be another popular filter. It's the opposite of the low pass. Super useful for when you're trying to create certain gritty sounds. For instance, let's say I have a saw with 8 voices. I can do that and then layer it with like another super saw, and then so this will add like this nice distortion. So then with that, you can push the detunement a little bit harder. You can see the vibe it creates. It's like a cool way to layer something. So if you're trying to get the highs of this frequent oscillator only, best way to do it. If you want to route both of them through it, by all means. All right, anyways, that's going to be the high pass, guys. We'll talk more about how to use it in sound design, but the next one we have is the band pass, which is one of my favorite ones. The band pass is low pass and high pass got drunk together and had a baby. That's the best way to put it. You got a little bit of the low pass and high pass, so it focuses in on one frequency spectrum, and that's about it. Resonance increases that peak. This is super useful for creating cool sounds, like let's say you want to have that saw and route the A through. Let's use it at 24, which again is going to be more strict. You can have it around here, get like that nice mid-low vibe. This is something you can't do with the other filters. Now, the cool thing here is that you can also get cool tonalities if you pair this up with distortion. You can get some cool stuff. So the band pass and distortion work really well together, and we'll talk more about that when we hit the effects section. Okay, with that, we have the peak, which is similar to the band pass in a way. It's like you're just boosting a certain frequency with the resonance. As standard as that, literally, if you have the resonance all the way down, you do have a decrease here and everything around it gets boosted. But simple as that. There's not much else I can say about that one. Peak 24 just makes it harder. And then the notch is going to be all the way down. So this is the opposite of a band pass. Notch 12. Higher the resonance, the less of that duck there is. And notch 24 is a bit bigger. Resonance and so forth. Now, what are these used for? Well, these are super useful if you're trying to add movement to a sound. Heavily useful for that. You can also decrease a certain frequency like the mid-lows, the 250 range. Make it sound a little bit hollow, like there's this fucking black hole and the sound's coming out like... You know, that's what the notch is used for, but mainly to add movement to a sound. All right, so those are going to be all the normal filters, the basic people, the white, the Mexican, the Asians, and all that. Now we're going to go to the, to the mix. Now, but the next one we have, guys, are the multi, and the multi are very interesting. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of them because there's certain things here, but if you can see here we have a low, and here we have a frequency knob. So we have a low pass that goes from right to left, as you guys know, working normal. But here we can set a certain frequency, which is kind of like a high pass. And you can have both of worlds. So you can create a band pass with this in theory, like so. But it's not the greatest. So I don't understand why these filters work. But you can... So the cutoff is your pretty much your low pass, and the frequency is your high pass. So that's put together there. Here we have a low pass, high pass in 12. So this one's a little bit cooler because as you can see, now we're talking, we can create. Yeah, let's lower this down a bit. Don't want to blow some ear. You can do the devil's horn, some titties, you know, whatever. I know some of you guys don't like me talking that way, but you get the idea there. Again, these are really useful for movement. You can have the resonance down, and again, just mesh the high pass with the low pass to create your very own band pass in terms of like how slopey you want it. Low pass and a band pass together, so the band pass will be set by the frequency, as you can see. Increase the resonance there, and then you have your low pass. And then you can have two peaks. This is the band pass one, and this is the low pass one. So these are code-up filters that were put together, which are pretty cool. But when it comes down to it, I rarely find myself using them unless you're trying to create some dubstep bass lines. Now, if you've seen a lot of sound designers, like from Cymatics, the Drew guy, he likes to do something here where he has a boost there and he's moving that. Well, you can easily do it with these filters. You just have to set it up, and it's the same exact thing. Okay? So you can add modulations to this, which we will once we get into the LFO and the envelope section. Now, the last one that we can talk about here, and I'm not going to really get into this much, but just know the L stands for low pass, the P stands for peak, the H stands for high pass. So this is just a morph between filters. So at the left here, you have your standard low pass. When we go to 12 o'clock, we're going to have the peak, as you can see there. And all the way to the right, we have a standard high pass there, as you can see, and we can kind of reduce there. All of these are just going to be morphs that you can utilize if that's what you're into and you want to do crazy stuff with that. Next is the flanges. We're going to talk about only one flange because they're almost all the same in the fact that they pretty much create these weird delayed, fucks up the phase kind of filter. Now, here we have the Comb Plus. Now, comb filters, guys, you know, a lot of people will use them and they sound cool and whatnot. You know, they have this very nice metallic vibe. They're useful for that. But what's exactly happening? Well, the comb filter, what it does is it meshes a delayed version of the sound that you have with the original, and it meshes it together, and you get something that has fucked up phase, pretty much. And then it gives you those nice kind of sounds, I guess. It fucks up the phase. That's what it's for. But a lot of people that make trap, that make dubstep have really taken a liking to them. You can do a lot with them. First off, you can set them up normally to where you have the resonance here for the resonations that the comb will have. This fucks up the phase, as you can see. So that's why you have all those changes. But it gives... It turns my super saw into a crazy sound. Now, the cool thing about this is if we add key track to it, it's so much better because it keeps its key. So the key track's working with you. So you can create a lot of cool metallic sounds with the comb filters. You can also automate the cut to get some really cool stuff. We'll get more into that, but that's generally what the comb filter is. We have comb plus, comb minus, so those are just kind of inversions there. Comb H6, comb HL6, all of these are the same. I cannot explain them. The most I can say is to go through them and just hear them, really, literally. Now, one thing you will find that when you go into some of these is you will find this high pass frequency knob. So you can use this to kind of get rid of some of the resonations. Let's say you have it like so. You can use this to kind of add like a high pass, so you can see the low resonations go away and you only have the high resonation. This is just generally that a lot of times with these effects, the higher the frequency, the better. These do not tend to work well with bass lines. Like if you're doing G-House and you put one of these, it might not be so good because you're going to spread out the sound, mess up the phase on a bass, which isn't that great. Anyways, those are going to be the flanges, the phasers, and you know, again, you're going to have that HL wild. This is going to change this filter variation. A lot of times, you know, it's just adding a little change to that filter, and as you move to the left and right, you can get some cool stuff. But we'll use those more once we start to make sounds for like dubstep and stuff, and we have the LFO section. But just know a lot of those are just getting that idea of running these effects like a flanger, a phaser at very high feedback ratios, which crosses a bit of combing. And combing is going to be the act of literally the phase just messing up, mixing the original source without any phasing issues to a delayed version of it, which causes the phase. Now, at the bottom, guys, we have the miss section, low EQ, band EQ, high. I'm not going to talk about those. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. However, we do have this thing called the ring mod here. It's an analog effect. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't know how to explain it. It's just too complicated, but it does give some cool effects if you mod that. If you have the key track on, you can get some good results. However, with it off, sometimes you won't get any keys. Sometimes volume won't come out, and you just have to set it right. And this is generally how you would use it. You know, a lot of people said ring mods are good for making bell type sounds, but I don't hear it. It degrades the quality a lot. Maybe with the key track. But that's going to be ring mod. Ring mod X2 is a little bit easier. You can do a lot of cool effects with it and whatnot. The spread spreads it. As you can see, you can hear more of it on the side. But nothing's coming out, so you gotta put it in mono. Yeah, but again, I'm not good at explaining those, so I do suggest if you want to learn more about this to watch another YouTube video. I rarely use them in my sound design. Never found good use for them. Next we have is a sample and hold. Degrades quality. Now it's weird because the sample and hold, what it was is, if for instance in an analog synth, guys, you would run a sound through it, the synth would hold on to that sound and hold it, so every time you play another note, it would hold it, and it could turn monophonic synths into fake polyphony. I think that's what's called paraphonic. However, here it's used differently. When you use it, as you go from right to left, it degrades the quality. It's like, kind of like using a decimator or a decimator or a bit crusher. Okay, the sample minus is sim. So as you go from left to right, you degrade quality, but you can see it does it in a way where you get more high frequencies towards the right. Whereas the sample hold maintains the lowest frequencies and creates more of a sort of like an Atari sound effect. Next we have is another comb, guys. Again, you know what that is already. This is another variation of it. This is a more used one. I'm sure a lot of you guys recognize that. A lot in trap. It's like the super saw in trap. Very standard there to use the combs. You can also just route any sound you have through it and hope it sounds good. Sometimes it will. You can turn the key track on, which gives you different results as well. Move it to the left. Okay. Next we have is the all passes, which is another version of the comb filter. Very similar to it in that it does almost the same thing in terms of messing up the phase or getting a delayed version. Mixing it with together. The cool thing about this one, though, it does have this damp feature, which, you know, whenever you see damp, guys, it's dampening the high frequencies. So if you don't want to sound with a lot of highs, you can dampen it, and you can see it kind of starts to kind of reduce those resonations at the top. So think of it as a low pass filter for this all passes filter. Okay, and then we have the reverb filter, which is very cool. Very hard for me to explain this one. I think what it's trying to emulate is a sound getting fully reverb. But the cool thing about this is that if you ever try to make a sound that needs like 100% reverb on it, you can emulate it using a reverb filter, so that way you still have access to the Serum filter when we do reach it. This one's heavily used in trap again if we have super saws at A+. You can dampen so you get more of the lows rather than the highs, and vice versa. Very similar. Super cool. Next, we have the French and the German LP, guys. And I know this video's taking a while, but there are just so many damn filters. They're going to be the same as the low pass and the high pass. The German is just the resonation. As you can see, it reacts a bit differently than the first one we tried. And then we have add bass, formants, which creates this sort of kind of vocal effect, which you can use. Formant 3 is usually the higher frequencies. Formant 1 goes lower, and then Formant 2, and then you can switch to Formant, so you can get different vibes there. Move the cutoff left and right to get the voice. Formant as well. You get different vibes out of it, different results, guys. And the resonance is just those peaks, how peaky they are, instead of how smooth. And with that being said, guys, the last thing is the band reject filter, which, you know, seems to be like a notch and a peak put together. The width changes that, pretty much that reducement there. The way I see it, when you see that, I think of it as an EQ, like you're decreasing this frequency here and boosting the top and the right. Loopers is heavily known for using band reject a lot, so if you want to check out that tutorial, The Sound of Loopers, I made a tutorial where literally every sound has a band reject on it. It gives a good vibe for his sounds, and that's about it, guys. So that's going to be the whole filter section, so now let's make some sounds. All right, guys, now the first thing is if we're making a pad, for instance, you know, we can use a low pass, and a lot of times, a lot of people and a lot of sound designers will use the sauce. You can mess it up switch it up and use something else. Different layers, different wavetables. I mean, we can even go with something like. But this doesn't sound patty at all. In fact, it sounds like just a sound, like a lead. So a lot of times low pass filters, we'll use this one first, are very useful for creating that nice vibe. We get rid of the highs and keep it very mellow. When we get to the envelope, we're going to practice more on programming pads. But as of now, you can kind of see the effect. If we had this fully open, it's not going to sound good. It's going to sound very harsh. So a lot of times low pass is the way to go. Now, the cool thing about this is, let's say I'm playing a chord right now, and I add a bit of resonance and have it closed. It creates a very nice vibe, like an alien effect. This is something if you like, you like. And if you don't, you're not going to like it. But it's cool for certain genres of music. It's sort of like we're in space, like you're watching something, you know, like you're discovering a new world. You're in a space station. That's what it reminds me of. Super cool for that stuff. And that's how we would use the low pass for a pad. If we have the standard, you know, super saw that a lot of people use in trance and even in dance music to this day for the atmosphere and a lot of the breakdowns. So that's what the low pass will be good for, guys. Add reverb on that and it's set, but I can't do it because we haven't activated the reverb yet. We haven't talked about it. Cool. Next thing we can do again with the super sauce is we can layer, like I said, you know, get these super sauce together, in fact. And in techno, we use a lot of these kind of drones, a lot of these, like, literally call them train horns, like, boom. So a lot of that you can use with a high pass. So you want super low frequency, super low, but you don't want the bass because obviously you have that big kick going. So you could use a high pass. The other one cool is a band pass. Sorry, that was a high pass. A band pass is also really good. This one you can create a little bit more of atmospheres that are a little bit dirtier because you can actually go lower, focus in on one frequency. You get the idea there with that, man. That is super strong. The other thing we can also do, again, like I was stating, we can layer the super saw. One of them can be normal, and then we can layer one on top with just the highs and maybe increase it up an octave or something and detune more. You get the idea there with that. Super strong layering and all that good stuff. Another cool thing that we could do, we could utilize 2 square waves to create this sort of Korg M1 kind of vibe to a sound. So we can kind of have these guys +7, maybe +1 on this, and have. We'll use a low pass for this. You can turn them into sines, so that way, if we have a sine like this, well, we need that low pass as well. To get rid of that super high siney vibe. This is how filters are very useful. And you can see I'm using relatively the normal ones. The reason for that is those are the most popular for the more traditional sounds. However, let's say we have a saw. We want to make it sound interesting. We can use the comb filter. High resonance, give it more of those, you know, resonations to destroy the phase. Let's give it a bit more voices. D2. Really cool. We can dampen the highs, as you guys know. Key check on if you want. You can make really cool sounds with just the oscillator section and the filter section. But as you guys can see, that's what filters do for us, guys. They add character to the sound. They take away frequencies from the sound to make it sound a certain way. A lot of times to achieve a sound, we don't need to add more stuff. We need to take away. And I hope by knowing and understanding the filter section and seeing how we applied it to certain sounds to get a certain vibe, hopefully that opens up your mind when it comes to sound design, that not everything is about having everything open and having the most you can get. In fact, some of the best sounds are created by grabbing sounds that sound crazy loud and crazy open with a lot going on and fine-tuning them down with a low pass so you get that nice vibe, that nice atmosphere that you want in a sound. With that being said, guys, that is the end of today's tutorial. Next episode, we will be going over the envelope and LFO section, and this will be a lot more fun because now we're going to be able to shape sounds. We're going to be able to create dubstep wubs. We're going to be able to create bass house wubs. We're going to be able to shape the sound to anything we want. And the most important part about sound design, one of the most important things when you start a sound, in my opinion, is always being able to shape the sound that you want to create. So if you want to create a pad that slowly comes in, you will be able to do that. If you want to create a whop, you can do that. If you want to create a doo-doo, you could do that. If you want to do a whom, boom, 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 you will be able to do that. But till next episode, guys, you guys take care, and you guys have an amazing day.